This is Behind the Mic by Kirkus Reviews, where the subjects are audiobooks and the actors who narrate them. I'm Jo Reed, and with me, contributor Kendra Winchester. Welcome, Kendra.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, it's always a pleasure. And you have a theme, Native Voices.
Yes, I read a number of books for Native American Heritage Month in November. So, listening to so many audiobooks, it was like a wealth of riches. It was difficult to choose, but I feel like we have a really great lineup today.
Okay, tell me about the 3 books you're about to talk about.
The 3 audiobooks we're going to talk about today is Sisters in the Wind by Angeline Boulley, performed by Isabella Star LaBlanc. We have We Survive the Night by Julian Brave NoiseCat, performed by the author. And then we have The Devil is a Southpaw by Brandon Hobson, performed by Shane Ghostkeeper.
So we're starting with Sisters in the Wind, and this is Angeline's third YA novel, and they're all kind of loosely connected, though certainly this is a standalone.
Yes. So this is actually the second book in the timeline, but the third book in the series, and they're all connected. They all know each other. And the first protagonist, Donis from Firekeeper's Daughter, her debut YA book, is in every single novel. So you get to see her, but it focuses on a Native woman in each of the books.
What is Sisters in the Wind about?
So this is about a young woman named Lucy, and we're in her present, which would be like the 2010s or so, and she is working as a waitress. And a mysterious man walks up to her and says, "Hey, I am a lawyer, and I work to try to get Native American children who were separated from their community and culture reconnected with their tribe." And she's like, "You know what? I'm not sure I'm Native American. Like, what's happening?" And so from there, what happens is after the guy leaves, there is a fire breaks out at the restaurant, and Lucy ends up breaking her leg, and someone set the fire. So who was it? And that's really where our mystery starts off with. And then we flash back to her childhood and we learn a bit more about her.
Yeah, it's interesting because she's biracial and she comes from a very loving home until her father dies, and then she ends up in foster care.
Yes. And, this book's theme is really looking at ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act, and why it's so important. Lucy, not knowing, well, her dad knew that she was Native American, but he never told her. So she was disconnected from her community, her mother's community and culture for her entire life.
One thing I love about Boulley's writing is they're YA novels, they're thrillers, but there's such deep insight into community, into belonging. They're just rich tapestries about Native life.
Yes, and one of the things I think is so well done in her books is that each of her novels focuses on a different like law that is important to Native culture and community. And I think that's so interesting and a great way to this is a young adult book. That is the target audience for these audiobooks. And that teaches them of the important laws that surround Native communities here in the United States. And I think that's so well done. It's so well crafted and gives a real life example about why these laws exist to protect Native communities.
Not only that, but she's never didactic in this.
Exactly. Yes.
It's just part of the story. I'm listening to this. I'm about 4 hours in and frankly longing to return to it. And her description early on of young Lucy living with her father is so lovingly detailed. I think Isabella Star LaBlanc narrates it in the way one recalls memory.
Yes. I really love LeBlanc's performance. I've listened to several audiobooks of hers. I think we've even talked about another audiobook that she's performed, but she is just so
Yeah.
good and she keeps getting better also. I listened to her very first audiobook and then each audiobook she grows in skill, which is phenomenal. And I think she really shines with younger protagonists and so it makes her perfect for a young adult audiobook.
She's narrated all of Angeline
Yes.
Boulley's books. She knows this world really well. And I really appreciated the subtle changes in her voice between young Lucy and present day Lucy.
Yes. Her skill in the subtlety of her performance, it keeps growing, and the way that she's able to capture those emotional nuances is just phenomenal.
Well, why don't we hear a little bit? Do you need to set this up?
So this is Lucy talking to her dad, wanting to know more about her mother, but he shuts her down pretty quickly.
All right, this is Sisters in the Wind by Angeline Boulley, and it's performed by Isabella Star LaBlanc.
When I was 6, 1996. I never knew my mother. My dad spoke of her 3 times in my life, when I was 6, 9, and 12. He didn't survive to my 15th birthday, so he couldn't keep to the pattern of my learning something new about her every 3 years. The first time, I asked my dad why I didn't have blue eyes like him. "Your mother had huge dark brown eyes," he answered as nonchalantly as if I'd asked what was for dinner. I suddenly realized that I came from 2 people. Mothers existed. They were in the park, where my dad took me to play. My classroom had a mother, but she was mine as much as she was everyone's.
Yeah, I think this gives you a hint about not just LeBlanc's performance, which I think is really excellent, but also that younger world that's being created and what's known and what's not known in it.
Yes, there's a lot of mystery to Lucy's background, and that is really laid out so well in the early parts of the novel. I have to admit, between the excellent performance and the great story, I got about halfway through this novel and I was so anxious about what was going to happen. I couldn't listen anymore. I had to take a break for like a week. I was just so anxious wanting to know what was going to happen to Lucy, and I think that goes to show how great of an audiobook this is.
This is a great pairing of author and actor, I think.
Yes, for sure. I hope there is more pairings of them in the future.
Oh, I hope so too. And it's an Earphones winner, correct?
Yes. Well deserved.
Well deserved. Okay, and the next book is
We Survived the Night by Julian Brave NoiseCat, performed by the author. And, I work at a bookstore. This is my current staff pick. This is just a phenomenal memoir. It's got a braided memoir because it also deals with history and culture by NoiseCat. And he is a filmmaker, a champion powwow dancer, and he was the first Indigenous North American filmmaker ever nominated for an Academy Award. So what can't this guy do, honestly?
and that was for the documentary Sugarcane, which examined unmarked graves at residential schools.
Yes. So you can tell that NoiseCat has been studying Indigenous history across North America. And what he does is he takes 3 different elements. He talks about the Coyote epic that people from his area of North America have long told. He takes his family history and his own history, and then also the history of different Native nations around North America. He braids them all together and creates a truly phenomenal audiobook.
Yeah, I agree. That's what my note is. It's, he casts this extremely wide net, giving us history, background, and then brings it back to the deeply personal, his own story, his family's story.
Yes. And so, as an example, one of the chapters is on the Lumbee tribe in North Carolina. And at the time he was writing this, had not received federal recognition. So he was talking about who is Native and who gets to acknowledge and decide who is Native. What does being Native enough mean? And after this book came out, the Lumbee tribe finally received their federal recognition. And I was just so delighted to see that. But it happened around the same time I was reading this book. So it was really great to read more about the tribe and how it came to be and why it's so important that they receive federal recognition.
The book certainly opens with this mesmerizing scene about his father and his father as an infant.
His father survived, I believe, an incinerator at a residential school. And it really captures your attention and really brings home the incredible violence that children received at those residential schools. And what NoiseCat does is he chronicles like the different generations and how it impacted them far into the future. And I think that's so well done and done with such care and love. I'm just very moved by it.
So was I. I mean, thrown away like refuse.
Yeah.
So why don't we hear a little bit?
This sound sample that we're going to listen to is about his dad, about NoiseCat's dad, fleeing his small community and heading to New York City and trying to make a life for himself.
This is We Survived the Night. It's written and read by Julian Brave NoiseCat.
My father was a rascal and a wanderer, but he did not know any of the epic tales of the trickster Coyote, and he had no clue that Coyote was his ancestor. Even though Dad was a full-blooded child of the Coyote people, he was alienated from his language, which he stopped speaking as a small boy. He did not know any of our people's songs or dances. He didn't know any stories besides the ones he lived, and even those were so painful that he tended to forget them. He had clubbed a few dozen fish and several Indians in his day, but he'd never shot a deer, let alone a moose, his people's favorite. In fact, he hated who he was and where he came from so much that he left it all behind, his family, his res, and before long, even his name. A long way from Canham Lake, Dad walked into a bar looking for a new woman and a better life, not knowing that though he had ventured far, he was still walking in the tracks of his original ancestor, Coyote.
It's an extraordinary story.
It really is. And each section that NoiseCat writes and tells about his father and about his mother is like that. He has this sense for what will capture a listener's attention and the different highlights from his parents' lives that will build the story that he is creating, the story of his family history and how he came to be. And I just think that's so fascinating. And the way he crafts his parents as characters is really phenomenal. You could see that in this section.
And what did you think about his performance of it, his reading of it?
I really enjoyed his performance. You can tell that he is a performer. You could tell that he's a singer. You can tell that he is used to speaking in front of people because he does it in such a clear way. And I was just really impressed by it because sometimes when authors read their own books, it doesn't work out. But I think this one really did.
Yeah, he has a lot of confidence, I think, as a reader.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
And our final book is The Devil is a Southpaw, which is a great title. And that's by Brandon Hobson and performed by Shane Ghostkeeper.
Yes. So this book I'm really excited to talk with you about because I want to know your thoughts, because this is a book I haven't read a book like this in a long time, for sure. This is by a Cherokee author, and it starts in 1988 at a juvenile correctional facility. So we have Milton and Matthew who are at the facility, and Milton is desperately jealous of Matthew's talent as an artist. And so for most of the book, we're reading a book within a book. We're reading Milton's novelization of their lives, and he is very much an unreliable narrator.
Boy, is he unreliable. I would say that. And it's so interesting because in Milton's prose, he uses really difficult vocabulary and obscure words as if he has to prove himself.
Yes. At first I was sitting here like, what is happening? It made you really sit and think about what the author was doing with Milton's novel and why it was written the way it was. And the prose itself reveals so much about Milton's character and his desperate need to be talented and his desire to be more talented than Matthew, but they're still friends of sorts, and it's so complicated.
It reminded me, and I'm really reaching here, but the novel A Separate Peace by John Knowles. Old. I'm definitely aging myself here. But the friendship between the narrator and the character Phineas. In spite of Milton's jealousy, you still get this picture of Matthew as this extraordinary human being.
Yes. And it's a very complicated book in that there are surrealist elements, there are doubles of famous artists, there are just fantastical things that happen. And for me, it felt very Alice in Wonderland, like no rules applied at a certain point. And I was so confused. Right. I would rewind the audiobook. I guess, do you even say rewind audiobooks anymore?
I still do.
Well, I would rewind the audiobook and go back and listen again and be like, okay, what is happening? And I have the print text because I'm a Brandon Hobson fan. And so I was like, okay, I know I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to look back in print and figure out what's going on. So I feel like that is definitely a text thing that's going on, because Shane Ghostkeeper is phenomenal. And he's the thing that saved me and kept me grounded in this book. And I really loved his performance.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about his narration because I know you love him.
I do. I do.
Yeah, he narrated the Buffalo Hunter.
Yes.
And got an Earphones Award for that, along with Marin Ireland and Owen Teale. It was a three-hander.
What a lineup.
He was really pretty fabulous with that book.
Yes, I really love Shane Ghostkeeper. I think there's something about the way that he performs that keeps you like locked in. And I think that's so important for a narrator. And I love that the way he handles the emotions of the different characters and the way he's able to move between these strange, surreal things to a more concrete section. And that was something that I really appreciated, because sometimes I did get lost. And I think that was the challenge of the audiobook for me.
Yeah. And to have that voice that can help keep you on track is so important.
I will now just look up whatever he's performing and be like, yes, I will be listening to this audiobook. Thank you.
Okay, why don't we hear a little bit of Shane Ghostkeeper? Do you have to set this up, or are we okay to go?
Well, this is a moment where someone has escaped the juvenile correction facility, and all the other residents have been sent out to look for them.
This is The Devil is a Southpaw by Brandon Hobson, and it's read by Shane Ghostkeeper.
In the spring of 1988, on a Sunday night in our last days at Tophet County Juvenile Correctional Facility, the dogs escaped out of the courtyard by chewing apart the bottom of the fence's rotted wood and then crawling underneath it. And at sunrise on Monday morning, when the alarm rang throughout the buildings, the guards discovered that Matthew had disappeared too. Only then were the rest of us allowed to search deep into the woods without using butcher knives to cut through the thick brush and twigs, as the drill sergeants had proposed, and without a thermos of water or fruit to keep us hydrated, as the cooks had suggested, because all we really needed was one another. The guards and staff and drill sergeants, who weren't concerned with finding the dogs, claimed they would call the police and began searching in the more open areas down the hill from the grounds. But they sent us, for whatever reason, into the dark woods.
See, for me, there are two different things going on. I like the tone and timbre of his voice.
Mm-hmm.
And additionally, I also really like his reading of the text, his pacing and his phrasing.
Yes. I think that's a great way to put it, because I can't imagine trying to read this novel as an audiobook. It must have been an incredible challenge. And I think he did a phenomenal job with it. And the way that he's able to capture these characters, this is a character-driven book, right? This is not a plot-driven book by any stretch of the imagination. And so the way he's able to embody these characters to be able to tell this story is just so well done.
Thank you. You suggested 3 really interesting and compelling books, and I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm always happy to chat.
Kendra, thank you, and I'll talk to you next month.
All right, talk to you then.
You've been listening to Behind the Mic by Kirkus Reviews. Behind the Mic drops on Thursdays, and if you follow us, we will just appear in your feed. And while you're at it, follow Fully Booked by Kirkus Reviews. Fully Booked is the podcast for book lovers. Every Tuesday, Kirkus editors and host Megan Labrise brings you author interviews, industry insights, and recommendations from the bestseller list. Find your next great book on Fully Booked by Kirkus Reviews. You can follow Fully Booked and Behind the Mic on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or wherever you get your podcasts. And then stop by kirkusreviews.com to check out reviews for both print and audiobooks. Behind the Mic is produced by Jessica Lockhart, Michelle Cobb, Stephen Cummings, Leslie Fine, Alan Minskoff, Alex Ritchie, Laura Rossi, and Kendra Winchester are our contributors. Jennifer Dell is our editor with assistance from Alicia Langerman. Tom Beer is the executive producer. The music is William Ross Chernoff's Nomads 4-Way. And I'm your host, Joe Reed. Good listening.